Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Attorney General's Office for Rex for Justice rally. Our first speaker tonight, please welcome to the podium our champion, Representative Mark Rozzi.
Thank you. What an honor to be here today, standing with the victims, fighting for justice for all victims. And we just had a historic vote in the House of Representatives where the first time a 2-year window was passed overwhelmingly. How you're clapping and yelling is how I'm feeling inside, people. It's been a long, long journey to get to this place today. And honestly, I never thought of that I would be standing here fighting for justice. I thought that our legislators would have taken care of this problem before, but they didn't. But today we did. When bad people and people who had the authority over children looked the other way and decided that it was better for them to protect the institution, their assets, other priests or Jerry Sandusky, whoever, when those adults looked the other way, they failed us. Not only the children, I saw that little child running around here, not only that little boy, but they failed all of us in Pennsylvania. And today, the good men and women in this legislature, in the House, made it right. Made it right today. But make no mistake about it, there's another chamber that has to do their job. And when we pass this bill out of the House tomorrow on final passage, we're going to send it to the Senate. And those are 3 words that are going to be chanted. Do your job. Do your job. And protect the children of this Commonwealth. Past, present, and future, though. Let's take care of all these victims who have been suffering in silence, who couldn't speak, but they have found the courage after so many years. It is because these victims here behind me who spoke up, and a great Attorney General who wasn't afraid to take it on. But it's their voices that have made this happen. And I can't be more thankful to my brothers and sisters who have stood firmly, shoulder to shoulder. Some of us, our predators are dead. My priest, after he abused me, and they sent him to a rehab center, and he was rehabbed. They put him into another diocese where he abused another 20 kids. But he got locked up in the county jail, and he got a little old-fashioned Texas justice. My predator's dead. I had forgiven him long ago. But I won't forgive the institution for allowing it to happen, that they moved him around 12, 13 different parishes and just put me in harm's way because they wanted to protect themselves. Judgment Day is upon us, people. Judgment Day is upon us, and this legislation will set the path straight for all victims of Pennsylvania. All of us deserve our day in court. We deserve to be heard. We deserve to expose our predator if they are still alive. We are coming for you. Let's be clear. Let's be clear. Thank you.
Please welcome to the podium our next speaker, Marcy Hamilton.
I am honored to be here on the day that the Pennsylvania House finally passed the window for justice. It took over a decade. You would have thought it was a no-brainer, but it finally happened. We are standing on the shoulders of giants. We are standing on the survivors who are no longer here. We're standing on the shoulders of the survivors who are too weak from addiction and PTSD and depression to come out. We're standing on the shoulders of the survivors I'm looking at and the survivors here. We are standing on the shoulders of Barbara Blaine, the founder of the Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests. We're standing on the shoulders of the Spotlight reporters, District Attorney Lynn Abraham, Senator Karen Peterson, who led the way in Delaware to pass the most progressive statute to date, Senator Meili Shimabukuro in Hawaii, who will have instituted a 6-year window this year, Representative Mark Rossi. We are standing on the shoulders of House leadership today, Attorney General Josh Shapiro, and the governor. Thank you to these giants for lighting up the darkness. Thank you to them for identifying the hidden predators that are still among us, for validating the victims, for shifting the cost of the abuse from the victims to the ones who caused it. Here in my home state, it is nice to see things moving in the right direction. But I have a message for the bishops and the insurance lobbyists. You are responsible for the abuse of children in the state of Pennsylvania. In 2005, a grand jury report was released in Philadelphia. In 450 pages, detailed abuse by 63 priests. We all knew what was going on. And what did we get? We got lobbyists. And they lobbied for 13 years. It's children or predators, bishops, and you've been choosing the predators. It's time to stop. We shouldn't have to ask you to stop lobbying. You should be doing what's right for children, regardless. The window is not unconstitutional. It's never been unconstitutional in a state with a window. And quit trying to peddle those lies to these members. But let's be clear. Who are the bishops hurting? They're hurting the 96% of victims in the state of Pennsylvania who have nothing to do with the church. They're hurting the victims from sports, families, private schools, and public schools. And so today I am honored to be standing with 3 of the bravest survivors in our national story. 3 of the survivors from Dr. Larry Nassar. Today I am joined by survivor, advocate, and gymnast Sarah Klein, Olympic gymnast Rachel Den Hollander, who came with us with a 2-month-old baby. So that's kind of crazy. And Jamie Dancher, also an Olympian gymnast and survivor. They're heroes for the survivors. They're also heroes for the children right now, for their children at home. Those are the ones we're protecting. So Rachel, please say a few words.
Thank you. Last November, I had the terrible privilege of addressing Federal Judge Janet Neff in the sentencing hearing for Larry's crimes of possessing 37,000 images of child pornography. It was the first time I asked the question, how much is a child worth? It was a terrible privilege because what had been done to these children was vile and wicked. But it was a privilege nonetheless because these precious children hadn't been found, and no one was there to speak on their behalf. And I remember so many nights standing in my kitchen, reading the indictments and the grand jury reports in my case and in all of Larry's cases, and crying to my husband, who is going to find these children? Who is going to find these children and tell them how much they are worth? And it was such a privilege to be able to, in some small way, advocate and lift my voice and cry for justice for those little girls. And in the same way, it is an incredible privilege to be here with these survivors today, to be able to stand with them and to advocate for them and to cry out with them for justice. What has been uncovered in your state is the same as exists across our nation. Institutions that are harboring pedophiles and predators, allowing the sexual abuse of children to go on for decades. Children who grow up hiding wounds so devastating that by the time they can speak of them, the halls of justice have been closed to them forever. And what is worse, their abusers, the church, the schools, the universities, the institutions that denied them justice, covered up their abuse on purpose. They denied them justice on purpose because reputation and image meant more to them than the bodies and souls of the children they were tasked with protecting. And this is why the legislation that is in Pennsylvania today is so incredibly vital, because it will give access to the justice system to survivors that didn't have a voice, who had it stolen from them. Removing the statute of limitations for criminal prosecution, lengthening it for civil claims, and creating a retroactive window is the only way that these survivors' voices can be heard and that they can cry out together for justice. And it is the only way to motivate these institutions to stop harboring pedophiles. I have 4 young children, and when I raise them, I tell them there are 2 reasons you can choose to do the right thing. You can do the right thing because you love. And if you do the right thing because you love, it will make doing the right thing joyful, even when it's hard. But if you're not going to choose to do the right thing because you love, there will be consequences to motivate you to choose what is right. And while I would love to be at a place in our society today where these institutions are choosing the right thing because they love the children entrusted to them, we are not there yet. And because we are not there, there need to be consequences accessed through our justice system for the institutions that participated in the sexual abuse of children for decades. We know what the evidence shows. False claims are rare. States that have passed legislative reform have not fallen prey to the doomsday scenarios the lobbyists are peddling in front of you. Find out what the evidence shows, and let's stop falling prey to old wives' tales and urban rape myth legends. We know the proposed Bishop Fund is nothing more than another attempt to control the survivors' voices and to limit the exposure of the Catholic Church. And we know that 96% of the victims don't even have affiliation with the Catholic Church, and they all deserve justice. So I ask you, Pennsylvanians, members of the House, and especially members of the Senate, how much are your children worth? Are they worth more to you than a lobbyist? Are they worth more to you than a campaign donation? Are they worth more to you than power? Because you're going to have a choice to make. And your choice is going to impact children that you will never meet. One of the most powerful moments for me last year was speaking at a children's advocacy center, and I had a woman come up to me and she said, "I want you to know that my niece was seeing Larry when you came forward. And he had given her gifts, the pins and the t-shirts, but he hadn't touched her yet. And because of what you did, my niece was saved." Senators, you are going to have a choice in the coming weeks, and what you do is going to have a real-life impact on the children in your state and on the children in a watching nation. It has been a privilege to use my voice to stand with these survivors and advocate, but I am only one person. It is time for you to use your voice. Use it for justice. Use it for what is right. Use it to speak for these children and for the generations yet to come. And answer the question, how much are your children worth? Thank you.
Jamie Dancher will now have some comments.
I want to thank Governor Wolf, Attorney General Shapiro, Marcy Hamilton, and the other distinguished officials and survivors for inviting me to speak here today. When I was a little girl, I became involved in elite gymnastics. Thanks to the sacrifices of my parents and siblings, God-given talent and hard work, I advanced quickly through the sport. I made the USA national team when I was just 12 years old in 1994. I made the USA national team every year after that, leading me up to make the 2000 Olympic team, where I competed with my teammates to win a bronze medal for my country. My career in elite gymnastics took an emotional and psychological toll on me during the period of my life after college. Through therapy, I now understand that the root cause of all my psychological and emotional trauma is the child sexual abuse I suffered during my elite gymnastics career at the hands of a person I trusted, Larry Nassar. Nassar was a renowned doctor and the team physician for USA Gymnastics and the US Olympic team during my entire elite career. He spent a considerable amount of time with us. He traveled with the team, treating and abusing child athletes during national and international competitions and training camps. When I first spoke out about my abuse at the hands of Dr. Nassar, Larry Nassar, in September of 2016, I thought I was the only one. I learned quickly that Rachel was the other one. I was disbelieved and even criticized by some in the gymnastics community for bringing this disturbing issue to light. I was the first survivor of Larry Nassar to bring a case in court against him and the powerful institutions that defended him and even enabled him for more than 2 decades. At first, I thought I might be alone, but soon other women went to court to seek justice. First a few, then a dozen, then 100, and now more than 400. In one way, I was fortunate. The laws of my home state of California allowed me as a 34-year-old woman to have access to the courts for abuse I suffered when I was a child. This is a benefit that thousands of victims of sexual abuse in Pennsylvania will not have unless the law is changed, and they deserve it. These survivors deserve the opportunity to confront their abusers in a court of law, demand the truth, and seek justice. They deserve the right to expose the people at the institutions that enabled their predators and protected them. They need the power of our justice system to hold these people accountable. In our case, 265 women came to court, confronted Nassar and the institutions that enabled his abuse. The judge said we walked into that courtroom as victims and walked out as an army of survivors. I'm here to bring a message to our brother and sister survivors in Pennsylvania. Our army is with you. We will help you fight for justice and change the law so that you will have your day in court. This is not an issue of race. It's not an issue of gender. It's not an issue of religion, and this is not a partisan issue. This is an issue about protecting children from sexual abuse. This is something that we all must support. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you can see the other side of the grand jury report up here. Remember, it's about all the children, all of them. Thank you. Come on.
Please welcome to the podium Senator Rafferty.
Good evening. Senator Wayne Fontana from Allegheny County has joined me as well. We're standing in the People's House. Look around. This is the People's House, where legislation is designed to benefit the people of the Commonwealth, where the court sits to hear cases, to render just judgments. This House does not belong to any institution. This House does not belong to any business. This House belongs to the people. And this is their chance to redress a wrong. I'm gathered here tonight with many friends, with Mary and Art, to stand in support for what they want. Their chance before the third branch of our government, the judiciary. 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, at the Senate Judiciary hearing, I know there was one senator who agreed with Marcy Hamilton's interpretation of the Remedies Clause. Me. I haven't backed away from that. The Remedies Clause of our Constitution, Article 1, Section 11, does not condone, does not protect this type of behavior. And I want you all to know that this is very important to me and to all the members of the General Assembly. The Remedies Clause is not something to hide behind. The Remedies Clause was designed by William Penn with roots in the Magna Carta and by our framers to allow plaintiffs the opportunity to redress their wrongs before the court of law. If reasonable people have reasonable differences on the interpretation of the Remedies Clause, pro or con, then there is a solution. You go to the people wearing the black robes. You go to the court of law and let them make the determination so these people and those that they represent, our victims, can redress their grievances. It's important for all of us to stand united to make sure that the victims have every opportunity to be heard in court of law. I stand here before you as someone who was horrified and thoroughly disgusted with the grand jury report. And I'm very happy that the House, in crafting the amendment this time, for not only the 2-year window, but made it for any organization, any individual who sexually abuses a child. It's not aimed at any one institution, but any that take in that horrific crime. In Pennsylvania, we will not allow this to continue. We will stand with our children. We will stand with those who have been abused to make sure their grievances are addressed and to make sure that Pennsylvania going forward is recognized as a leader among the states in child protection. We did much over the years. In light of what happened with Penn State, we need to continue on to make sure that we, as senators and as representatives, do what's best for the people of this great Commonwealth. I thank you for allowing me to be here this evening. As I said earlier today, the work done by then District Attorney Lynn Abraham through the great work done by Attorney General Josh Shapiro has shed the light on this heinous crime and made us look at all organizations now to see what's being done to protect our children. With your support, your help, we'll get this done and get it to Governor Wolf for his signature. Thank you very much. God bless all the victims.
Please welcome to the podium Senator Leach.
It's good to be with you again. I know some of you were here this morning. I apologize if I say some of the same things, but I think they're important to say one more time as we consider this, as this now moves over to the Senate. I am here in full support of the recommendations of the grand jury, including the 2-year window, including every aspect of that recommendation. I must admit, this was a bit of a journey for me. I had some concerns early on about this, and I wound up doing something that almost never happens in Harrisburg. I changed my mind. And you know, I said that this afternoon, and it gets easier every time. I mean, it's amazingly liberating. I hope some of my colleagues in the Senate try it. I'd recommend it highly. Sometimes it actually feels good to think something through and come to a different conclusion. You know, I was trained in the law. I practiced law. I spent a third of a century in the law. And I sort of became very self-impressed by my ability to wring the last drop of meaning out of every statute and the last nuance out of every court opinion. And so I got sort of caught up in my own head on hyper-technical readings of the law and this and that and worst-case scenarios, all of which were sort of served to blind me to what got me into politics in the first place, which is the desire to help people who've been wronged get justice. I was too analytical, and I was not compassionate enough. And a couple of things happened which showed me this. Number one, I read the grand jury report. And as I've said, that was very difficult to get through. I had no idea the pervasiveness and the perniciousness of the abuse that occurred and the truly horrific efforts by people who we trust and should know better to cover it up. That shook me to my core. The other thing that really helped me was I met with a bunch of survivors and advocates, some of whom are here today. A number of different meetings, but listening to their stories of abuse personally, and also I met with the parents of children who had committed suicide as a result of abuse. I had met with people who were abused at the hands of, coaches and teachers and priests and people you trust. And it was really difficult to continue to think that I need to fight against this. And I give a shout out to Marcy Hamilton, who spoke earlier. She and I had a long, intricate discussion about the law and really helped talk me through some of that. I remember Mark Rossi called me. I was in California touring a marijuana dispensary, different issue. But we had a long conversation on the phone while I sat in the car. And all of these people, I owe such a debt of gratitude to for helping me on my journey, to help me understand the issue, and to help me come to what I believe with all of my heart is the right conclusion. We have to fight for justice. We have to fight for this sort of change. And let me just say a word about how to get people to change their minds, because you are a great example of that. The number one thing you have to do is you have to humanize the situation. It's not the same when you're reading cold textbooks as when you're talking to human beings. The other thing I would say is never give up. It took me a while. It takes other people a while sometimes. You get very intellectually attached to your positions. It's hard to pull people apart from that. Don't give up. Keep talking to them. Be respectful, but be persistent. And eventually, not everyone, but many people of goodwill will come around to seeing the right thing to do. And so we now have to deal with the bill over in the Senate. I guess that's theoretically possible this week, but may be more likely next week. And we've got to get a few more senators to change their mind. I'm going to do everything I can to talk to my colleagues and tell them about the journey I've been on and say, it's okay. You can change your mind. You can say, I'm wrong. The first couple times I said it, I couldn't even get the words out of my mouth. But eventually, it feels good to have come to the right position. So everyone in this room has to fight. The fight is not over. Talk to your senator. Talk to them again. I'm going to do the same thing. And at the end of the day, we will get justice for these victims. I promise you. Thank you so much.
Please welcome to the podium Democratic Appropriations Chairman Senator Hughes.
So as Senator Leach indicated, we got about 8 days. 8 days of Senate session left before we adjourn for the year. For thousands of individuals, this may be the most important 8 days in their life. Thank you, Representative Rossi, for standing firm, standing tall, being unwilling to buckle under the pressure, the relentless pressure that I know has come your way over the years. Thank you for standing tall, for being able to come through and taking your pain and transition it to a policy that will make a difference in the lives of thousands, maybe millions of people. Thank you. Give him a round of applause. So it is about these 8 days. It really is. There are a lot of issues that we confront on a daily, if not weekly basis over the years. And some of them have their nuances. Some of them have they can be tweaked a little bit, but not this one. Not this one. No tweaking of this. No nuances of this. These next 8 days will determine, really, in many respects, the character of the people who work in this building. These next days will determine who we are as public servants, people with the responsibility who have been duly elected to represent the concerns and the interests of the people in our respective districts. They will determine who we are. And in more cases than none, this one issue will set the stage, possibly, for a national transformation. Think about it. It's not just about who we are for ourselves, right? In many respects, it is who we are for the thousands, if not millions, of folks who've had to suffer, been pushed aside, retreated, did not feel that they were empowered to stand up for themselves, to get the justice necessary. So we're standing up for ourselves, but we're standing up for so many more folks who are not strong enough, for no fault of their own, to stand up for themselves. So it is on us. So I thank you. I thank you for being willing to come out of the shadows, to come out into the full glare of the cameras and the public inspection and say no more, never again. No one is forced into the sidelines. You have a full voice. You are not less than. You are more than. is about full implementation of the grand jury report. Full implementation. No tweaking. No amendments. No more. We're done with that. That is over. No more amendments. We've got 8 days. We've got 8 days. 8 days. 8 days. 8 days to call the question on who we are. Who we are. 8 days. 8 days. 8 days. 8 days. We take a solemn oath when we are sworn into these offices to represent all of the interests of every one of the constituents that we represent. We've got 8 days to prove that. 8 days. 8 days to prove that we are truly in line with the oath that we've taken. 8 days. 8 days. 8 days. Let's get this done. Let's get this done. Let's get this done.
Next, please welcome to our podium our state victim advocate, Jennifer Storm.
So I remember being here 2 years ago after the release of the Altoona Johnstown report with Representative Rozzi and several of you. And I remember it being a smaller crowd. And I remember us having to leave. We were getting rushed out of here because there was a massive rally happening for a dog. And no offense against Libra, he's a beautiful dog. It was a great piece of legislation. But I remember as we were getting almost shoved out of here thinking, oh my God, there are hundreds of people behind us standing up for a dog. And we couldn't get those people to stand with us for our children. And I remember so many of us saying, where is the outrage? I don't know about you, but this feels like outrage. I want to thank members of the House who stood firmly today and voted and did the right thing. It's not easy to always do the right thing when you have special interests, when you have high-powered lobbyists, when you have a lot of money coming your way. It's not easy always to do the right thing. But as elected officials, it is their duty. This isn't their house. They rent this space. This is our house. This is our children's house. They have a duty to do the right thing. You know, we've been talking about sexual violence for so long and the devastating impacts. And when I walked in here today, and in full disclosure, I came from the Bill Cosby sentencing, which I'm going to talk about a little bit because there's such a juxtaposition from where I just was to where I'm standing today. But I walked in and I saw my beautiful son, who is the picture of innocence and joy and beauty, right? He's 3 years old. And I look at him every day and I think, please, God, don't let anything ever happen to him. Because I know all too well, as do the amazing people standing behind me, I know that then when I look at him again, this sparkle in his eye will be gone. It will darken. And the shimmer that comes out of his soul when he smiles and laughs will crumble. And he will become angry, and he will become confused, because he will not understand what he's going through. Survivors of sexual assault are confused. They're scared. They're being perpetrated upon in a way that exceeds any of our ability to truly understand the impact. I've said this before and I'll say it again. It literally changes your DNA. You are no longer the person you were before the crime happened. And it takes years, it takes decades to be able to summon the courage to speak out, to look for help, to pick up the phone. We are here today because so many of these amazing people behind me somehow summoned up that courage today, because it's a daily struggle. It is a life-altering impact. Some of us go down very dark paths, and drugs and alcohol become coping mechanisms. As a result, sometimes we lose lives. And for that, I just want to take a moment to remember Corey. Sometimes we can't tolerate the pain because we're trying to kill it. And so, unfortunately, we take our own lives. And for that, I want to remember Joey. And I want to remember Art. That man right there. Every rally, every event I've been at, he has stood holding that picture of Arthur III so valiantly, so boldly. Your sons will be remembered. We stand here today because so many victims have been denied justice. I mentioned earlier that I came from the Cosby sentencing this morning, and I'm there with roughly about 15 victims. And then there's 5 kind of what we call primary victims, right? And I marvel at the strength of these women who have been utterly disgraced and disparaged, not only in the media, but in the very courtroom that we sat in. I was literally having to fight off people who were shouting horrific things at them and shoving cameras in their faces because they don't believe them. Part of that problem is that they have not had the ability, because of our arbitrary laws, to come forward and get their day in court. But the amazing thing about these women is it didn't stop them from showing up today for Andrea's day in court. Because when one of us gets justice, it feels like justice for all of us, right? When one of us gets a day in court, we show up and we support that person. Because unfortunately, for that one person that gets their day in court, there are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of survivors who are denied that right every day. One of the things that shocked and appalled me is that we had to get up at 4 o'clock this morning, and we had to stand in line at 6 a.m. because these 15 survivors who weren't a party to the case didn't have seating in the courtroom. So we had to make sure we got there at 6 o'clock in the morning so that we could beat all the other people into the line so that we could actually get into the court hearing that was going to give them validation and justice. And we got through that line, and then we got to another line, and then we had to sit and wait for 40 members of the media to come in, and I love you guys, no disrespect. But it was not lost on me that here are these brave women who have been so egregiously harmed, and they're the last ones in the courtroom. And sure enough, we were in the last row of the courtroom. But every one of them sat there, and they're going to come back tomorrow. We're going to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. We're going to go in line again, because that is justice for them. Those survivors weren't able to be here today because they're a little tired, but they wanted me to give you a message, mainly directed at you, that they stand with you. And even though they're not from Pennsylvania, some are from Toronto, some are from California, some are from Nevada, they care about what happens in Pennsylvania. And every one of them, when they went outside and did media, talked about this, talked about what's happening in Pennsylvania, and they urged people to call their legislators to vote for this bill. because when one of us gets justice, it feels like we all do, right? I want to thank so many amazing, brave people who have stood up for victims. Representative Rozzi, you are a hero. It has been... It has been your passion, your commitment, your inability to waver, your booming voice that I have come to love and appreciate so much, that has kept us together through all of this. I mean, we're talking years and years and years we've been coming here, asking these people to do the right thing. And one grand jury report would come out and we'd say, oh, this is it. This is what's going to happen. And then it didn't. I really believe that this is going to be the time. And it is to your 100% credit. And I thank you. I want to thank and acknowledge the Attorney General's office. This kind of change and this kind of momentum doesn't happen easily. And it has been the passion and the unwavering commitment of this office to make sure that these individuals were acknowledged, that these survivors felt heard. I have worked with a lot of prosecutors in my life. I've done this work for a good portion of my life, and I've never seen a prosecutor's office handle survivors with such care and compassion. These people weren't just witnesses, they were family members. When things weren't looking so great at certain points of the grand jury report, I personally know that these individuals spent hours upon hours answering calls, returning calls, sending emails. This is the good work of the Commonwealth. This is our future. I'm so honored that we have an Attorney General in Josh Shapiro that will stand up and do the right thing at all costs, right? Because there's a lot on the line here. It's a good timing that our governor has just joined us as well, because we have a governor, and it's a governor. We have a governor in this building that cares about the issues of not just crime victims, but about all people. And he uniquely cares about the issues of crime victims. And I am so grateful to be able to work with him and to be able to stand with him and know that the leadership from the very top not only is putting the words out there, but truly in their heart gets it and believes it. That's a gift. We've got some amazing people working really hard for us in this Commonwealth. I opened up a speech last week with the quote, and I'm going to modify it a little bit, that evil prevails when good people do nothing. We have an amazing amount of really good people here. And we have a couple that need some convincing. And I have nothing but faith that the brave survivors behind me and those of you out here, you're going to help me convince those people that maybe haven't found the courage yet to do the right thing. One vote will stand between the release of shackles that have been placed on survivors for decades. It will give them justice. It will give them a voice. One vote. Do the right thing.
Please welcome to the podium Mary McHale.
Okay, now I'm nervous. I was speaking, then I wasn't, now I am. But you know what? It doesn't matter because it comes from the heart and it's my story and that's all I know. But I've been up here for quite a few years with my childhood friend, Mark Rossi, Joey Behe, and family, old friends, fighting for this cause. My plan was to never come out with my abuse. Until 2004, I opened up the local newspaper, and a girl at my high school, Diana, was in there with my abuser, and I didn't want her to be alone in this. So I called the local newspaper, called the lawyers, got so far, but because of the statute, it couldn't go anywhere. So for the next many years, it's just been up and down. And I've come to as many of these rallies as I can, but it's never been like this. I mean, this is awesome. You know, I just cannot comprehend. I just cannot understand what the question is here. I mean, do the right thing. I mean, if you don't vote for the bill, you're voting and you're standing with the predator, the pedophile. But I want to say this at this point in my life, as far as it has come. Never before, there's always good that comes from bad, and it has been a journey. And I am truly grateful today for the people up on stage that I call family today. I mean, it has been amazing. We stay in our group conversations. We reach out to each other. You know, I had to put my dog down a month and a half ago, and I didn't even know how to pull myself out of bed, but I was able to reach out to this family behind me and get through the day. And sometimes that's what it's about, getting through the day, getting through the moment, you know. And it's just awesome, you know. But I just pray and hope. I mean, it was wonderful to be a part today with Mark Rossi, to be able to witness that. But I just pray and hope that when it gets to the Senate, that they do the right thing. I want to personally thank Josh Shapiro in office. I mean, from the beginning, it's just been an unbelievable experience. I mean, for what it has to be. But it's always been wonderful love and support. And Jennifer, and I could stand up here and probably thank so many people, but I think I'm just going to keep it short and sweet. And I believe introduce one of my family, Sean Doherty, who's been like a brother to me. I can't say enough about him and what he has done for all survivors. So thank you.
Good evening. I can't tell you how absolutely honored I am to have been chosen to represent these people. All week, for the last 2 weeks since I've learned that I was going to give this speech, I've been trying to write this speech. I've written 5 speeches. The politics on this issue is so fluid that I've changed 5 speeches, so I'm just going to talk a little bit. I've had different people contact me, say, what are you going to say in your speech? You got to go after this guy. You got to beat up this guy. Oh, no, wait a minute. They just flipped. You got to stay away from this guy. You can't offend this person. They might have something in the committee. Don't offend anybody. Just talk. So that's what I'm going to do. Everybody behind me has been nothing but offended through this whole process. I'm offended that these young men can't be sitting behind me right now. I'm offended that I've been coming here for the amount of years that I've been coming here. We're not allowed to offend anybody. But yet, everybody offends us constantly. This is not about money. This is about justice. We've seen children walking through here all day long. Joey's a child. Cora's a child. Our son's a child. They're their children. They're always going to be their children in their hearts and in their minds, and they're never going to go away. They're always here, even though they're gone. They live with this anguish every single day of their lives for nothing more than politics. So I'm offended. I'm honored to be here tonight. We heard on the House floor debate, an argument, cheering, roaring. One of the arguments was a constitutional argument. The representative stood up, made his case. It's right for him to do. It's his right. He argued about the constitutionality. He said that he swore an oath to protect that Constitution. By him just standing up and saying that, he protected his oath. I swore an oath to protect the Constitution, too. I'm a military veteran. And I feel that's, thank you, but that's not what I said. I feel I'm honoring my oath, too. He feels he's honoring his oath. I feel I'm honoring my oath. We're on both sides, on different sides of this issue. Luckily for us, we live in a wonderful country, in a wonderful commonwealth, where we have a remedy for that. It's called the Supreme Court. Don't say something isn't constitutional because it's an election year and you don't want your constituents to see you vote no. It's easier to say it's not constitutional. This is about justice. We have a national debate going on right now about why we didn't report, or what we remember and what we don't remember, all right? 5 years after my statutes of limitation ran out, when I was 23 years old, I'll talk to you about what I remember and what I don't. 5 years after my statutes ran out, 10 years after the abuse stopped, I was an active duty sailor aboard the USS Frank Cable, a submarine tender out of Charleston, South Carolina. When you're in the Navy and you're out to sea, you're very close with your crew, because when that thing catches fire, nobody's coming. When you're in trouble, nobody's coming. It's just you and the person next to you. And when one of you is short, meaning my discharge was up, I was honorably discharged in 1993. Everybody in your division knows you're leaving. You're close. You only got one more week to jazz the person, to jag them, to grind them, to cut them down, have fun with them, make fun of them. No better way than to tell you how big Doc's hands are for that rectal examination that you got to give for the medical. When I was 13 years old, I was digitally penetrated by my priest. 10 years later, it was going to happen to me again for medical reasons. Cancer runs in my family. I knew it was important for that. You can't imagine what goes through your mind. I don't remember the officer's name, but I remember looking at his insignia to make sure that he was a medic and not a clergy member. I don't remember if we were at sea or we were in port, but I do remember that he was wearing his khaki working uniform, and in fact, Doc had very big hands. I don't remember what fan room I went into, very loud room on a ship, afterwards to mask my screams, my rage, so nobody else could hear me. I don't remember what fan room, but I remember being in that fan room. I don't remember the officer's name, but he knew I was physically shaken. He knew I was concerned about what was going on. And as a good officer and a good doctor, he put his hand on my shoulder. I don't remember what deck of the ship medic was on, but I remember the second he put his hand on my shoulder, I wanted to turn around and punch him in his face. This is the cost of this. This is the cost of this. I'm from Johnstown, Pennsylvania. We have been ravaged by this. Corey's a NICU nurse. Damn good one from what I hear. Attorney General has one of our former doctors. Everybody thought he was a damn good one too, but he's not. Attorney General's got him sitting in trial, waiting trial. They had him in 1998. Had him. Brave little girl came forward. The community surrounded by the doctor. Doctor threatened suit, scared the family. They're just after money. Family be's quiet. Doctor gets his license back in 2000, and for 18 years he sees children. Tens of thousands of them. Tens of thousands of them. Until a 12-year-old brave little girl just this year came forward because he did it again. We've both been here before, Mark. I was so happy for you today. I was so honored to be up in the gallery. I'm so proud to stand next to you. But we've been here before. We're not finished yet. Luckily for me, the Eagles won a Super Bowl this year, and they can come with my Steelers now, and we can say, this is Pennsylvania politics. And just like football, you better strap on two chin straps. And we're going to play 60 minutes this year. We're going to play 60 minutes of football. You don't have to vote yes for the bill, but you have to let it go to the floor for a vote. You're either going to stand with us, or we're going to show the world that you're standing with pedophiles. Enough is enough. Time is up. We have 8 days left. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm proud and privileged to be here. It is my absolute honor in an election season. I don't know if the governor understands how absolutely this means to all of us to have a governor put his arm around a victim in an election season in Pennsylvania. That's never happened in my lifetime. So it is my absolute honor to introduce our governor, Pennsylvania's governor, the Honorable Tom Wolf.
Thank you for your bravery and for your courage, all of you. Thank you. I am honored to be here today and thank all of you for being here, and certainly thank you for being here. And Sean, thank you for that very nice introduction. I really appreciate that. Thank you most of all for sharing your stories. And thank you for your call for our legislators to pass reforms that are crucial to ensuring Pennsylvania remains a national leader in supporting victims. I'm hoping there is a new sense of urgency as a result of the grand jury investigation that the Attorney General conducted, and I'm hoping that there's a new sense of urgency given the fact that folks had a chance to hear the stories that they heard today. The time is absolutely right to take action and to pass these 4 critical reforms, the 4 recommendations of the grand jury. The time is right to trust our instincts to do the right thing. We can right this wrong by eliminating the statute of limitations for the future, strengthening systems for the abused, and providing victims with the window for real justice in our legal system. For decades, a powerful institution denied these victims their right to due process. It was systemic. It was the ultimate betrayal. I'm a person who values faith, my spirituality, and I, like so many others, feel betrayed by both these acts and by those that enabled them and by those who covered them up. If we cannot defend victims of these horrific acts, we may very well lose the trust of those we represent, of those most in need of defense, most in need of protection and of support. Pennsylvania has already shown that it is at the forefront of states willing to take these issues seriously by virtue of what the Attorney General did, by what Josh did. Now it's the time for Pennsylvanians to take real action. If not now, when? How else can we do right by these victims? Legislators must consider the profound tragedy, the betrayal, the failure revealed in the grand jury report, the horrible ordeals for an unimaginable number of victims, the shocking number of adults who didn't do the right thing. When you think of that first and foremost, then I don't think we really have a choice but to act. And to act now, for everybody here, for every victim who still stands in the shadows, for every child and family affected by these decades of tragic events, for everyone whose trust was shattered, for everyone who was betrayed. It's time we work to make sure those who felt silenced can now speak, and that we will now listen, and that we can be trusted to do the right thing. Thank you, and thank you again for your courage. I am honored and proud to introduce the love of my life, my best friend, my wife, Frances Donnelly Wolf.
Thank you all for inviting me here today for this important conversation. And like Sean and Tom and many others, I'm very honored that I was invited to participate. I also want to thank Attorney General Josh Shapiro and his team for their incredible work in exposing these dreadful crimes and their call for change. And I want to thank you, especially to the victims who have shared their stories with us today. Thank you. What we have read in the grand jury report and what we have heard personally from many here today, detailing the child sex abuse by Catholic priests in 6 Pennsylvania dioceses, is horrific. It is shameful, it is criminal, and it is beyond all understanding. As a lifelong Catholic, the shock and pain of this horrifying news is beyond my comprehension. It is personal to me, as I know it is for so many Pennsylvanians, and for so many across our country and the world. And like so many, I feel betrayed. These victims, these brave people who have found the strength and the courage to come forward, some of whom are right here with us tonight, have described to us in gut-wrenching detail not only their wounded bodies, but the pain of their souls. They have revealed the deeply personal wounds and pains that they continue to live with every day, and they will do so for the rest of their lives. Their faith and their trust in institutions and in people have been compromised by the trauma inflicted on them and the official responses to it, or the lack thereof. For years, the stories of their ordeals were put aside, relegated to the fringes, locked away, and ignored by authorities. And now, in the retelling and the reliving of those horrors, they demonstrate courage by exposing their vulnerabilities to us all, perfect strangers to them. In asking them to come forward, we ask them to find that sense of faith and trust that they once had. And we are asking them to place that trust in us as individuals and as members of institutions. But in return, they ask us not only to find justice for their cause, but quite simply and more importantly, and perhaps in a more difficult fashion, they're asking us to do right. They trust us not to fail them again. And so we owe it to them and to our collective sense of trust and faith, while recognizing the potential of good in each of us, in each other, to do so. There must be swift legislative action to protect future victims from these horrific and degrading offenses. My husband has long supported legislative reforms built on the 4 recommendations of the grand jury. These reforms will not come close to fixing the injustices these victims have endured, but they will be important beginning steps in protecting future victims and providing recourse for the abused. Our lawmakers and elected leaders must come together immediately to agree on legislative changes that will protect victims of all crimes, and particularly the youngest, the most vulnerable survivors of these unfathomable abuses. We have failed these victims so badly for entirely too long. Now is our chance to do right, to make up for our transgressions of doing nothing in the past. Otherwise, we violate our collective duty to look out for, to care for, and to love each other. This is our penance. We cannot fail the victims now. Otherwise, we too are complicit in perpetuating this sin against them. It is now my honor to introduce our Attorney General, Josh Shapiro. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. To my good friend and Pennsylvania's good friend, our First Lady, Frances Wolf, thank you for speaking with a level of compassion that sums up how we in Pennsylvania feel. To our great governor, for your commitment to justice. You've made it clear that you've drawn a line that says this is what we will do in Pennsylvania, and that is the first thing that you will do with your pen is draw that line. The second thing you will do is sign this bill into law and bring justice to these victims. Thank you. Thank you. And when the governor signs that bill, I know Mark Rozzi is going to be sitting right next to him. I sat with Mark's mom in the gallery today as we watched Mark speak on the House floor with a level of passion and commitment and determination that is not often seen in this building. I was so proud, Mark, to be sitting next to your mom. We were all proud to watch you do what you did on the floor today. Thank you for your leadership. You know, I appreciate the gratitude that has been expressed here tonight in my direction. But the truth is, the thanks really belongs to many others. First and foremost, it belongs to my team in the Office of Attorney General. Michelle Henry and Jen Selber and Dan Dye. Every single prosecutor, every agent, every member of our team, 150 members of Team OAG worked on this matter. I am so unbelievably proud of these great Pennsylvanians. But the real thanks, the real gratitude goes to each and every one of you. You see, you, the survivors, you inspire me. You've kept us going in this process. And when the attacks came, and usually they were under seal, by the way, but when those attacks came, we took our comfort in the people who were standing here behind me. Whether it was Corey or Carolyn or Bill or Bob, we found strength in their stories and in their determination. So while I hope that this report leads to change in our state laws and personal healing, the truth is, what I want to tell you here tonight is that you've changed me. You've nourished my soul. And you've actually strengthened my faith in humanity. You know, they said in the beginning, they said you weren't going to testify before the grand jury. They said you weren't going to show up today. They scoffed, Sean, when you said this was a movement. Well, they were wrong. And they were wrong every single time. Each and every one of these people behind me are heroes. They are driving the change in this capital. They are driving the change in this Commonwealth, in this country, and across continents. You know, since the release of the grand jury report, I've received the same questions many times. Why haven't each of the 301 predator priests been charged? Why can't the thousands, and the grand jurors said thousands, of survivors get justice? What about the criminal conspiracy to cover up the abuse? The simple answer to all three questions is that our laws do not go far enough to protect the victims of child sexual abuse and hold those people accountable who cover it up. The 23 men and women of the grand jury, heroes here in Pennsylvania, who listened to gut-wrenching testimony for 2 years, who reviewed 500,000 pages of the church's own secret archives, had 4 specific recommendations to ensure that this type of widespread sexual abuse and cover-up can never happen again in Pennsylvania. Think of this. They heard from these courageous souls. They reviewed the documents that showed what happened. And they said 4 things should happen now. Get rid of the criminal statute of limitations for child sexual abuse, like 41 other states have done across this country. Create a 2-year civil window so victims may sue to receive the care and the treatment that they deserve. Specify that confidentiality agreements do not cover or prevent communications with those of us in law enforcement. And clarify the penalties for continuing to fail to report child abuse. That's what the grand jurors said. And moments ago, thanks to Representative Rozzi, lawmakers began to listen. The House passed, thanks to a large bipartisan group of members, the House passed the Rozzi Amendment,
creating in part a 2-year window for victims to recover for the harms of the abuse that they suffered. You know, I've spent so much time with these survivors. Not one has ever expressed a desire for compensation. But they shouldn't have to go without the means to pay for the counseling and the substance abuse treatment and the other assistance that they need to fight the demons inflicted upon them by their priestly abusers. Now, following the House's leadership, the Senate must pass this reform and the other reforms that the grand jurors recommended. Let me be clear. It is not only constitutional, it is just. It is just. The 23 men and women of the grand jury that issued this report, and every one of you here tonight and those that you represent, have started a movement across this country. It's not limited to Pennsylvania any longer. The time for institutions to protect their reputations over the victims is over. That is true. That is true for the Catholic Church. That is true for USA Gymnastics. That is true for Hollywood. That is true for the corridors of political power in this country. And whether the abuse happens in a university, a government agency, a nonprofit, or indeed a church, know that in the Office of Attorney General, we are investigating the sexual abuse of any Pennsylvanian wherever we find it. Wherever we find it. Look, I know it took strength and courage for survivors to come before the grand jury and testify to their abuse. And that courage, of course, led to this historic report. It also inspired others to come forward and share their truth. 2 people I met here today shared their truth for the first time because of what you did, because of the strength that you showed. To the others listening here tonight who have not yet found your voice, know that when you are ready to call our clergy abuse hotline, we will not only listen, we will act, and we will act for you. As for us in the Office of Attorney General, we're focused on the work ahead. This Wednesday, we'll be in the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, making sure that the full, unredacted grand jury report gets released, because every survivor's truth matters, and no one should be less important than anyone else. Every truth matters. And under the leadership of Mike and Adrian, we'll be walking these halls to make sure that not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 out of the 4 grand jury recommendations gets passed. That is our task ahead. There are still powerful forces who oppose us in this Capitol. The lobbyists for the Catholic Church, the lobbyists for the insurance industry that put forth bogus arguments to try to silence your voices, and the bishops who have failed to meet the challenge that I put forth before them, to simply do what the grand jurors recommended. So far, not a single one has said they'd support all 4 grand jury recommendations. That is the real and only test to determine whether or not the church has really changed. Support these 4 grand jury recommendations. I don't know how any bishop or any lawmaker can read this grand jury report and not be for each and every one of these grand jury recommendations. Look, folks, the time for words has passed. The time for action has arrived. These survivors have inspired me and inspired countless others across this country. Each and every one of us has a responsibility to do our part, to be part of the change. You know, Scripture teaches us that no one is required to complete the task, but neither are we free to refrain from it. What does that mean? It means that each of us has a responsibility to get off the sidelines, to get in the game and do our part. They've done their part. The lawmakers began to do their part. The governor's prepared to do his part. Now every single lawmaker must do their part, pass these reforms, and let's move forward as Pennsylvanians to look out for the welfare of each and every person in our Commonwealth. Thank you, and God bless. Thank you. Thank you. Now, I want to invite the governor and the First Lady to come up and join me, because thanks to them and the miracle of technology somehow, come on up, please, Governor, I would ask you to come up. Mike Verb tells me that if I count down from 5, standing together with the governor and the First Lady, that this rotunda will be turned blue, the color that indicates survival and strength. So together with the governor and the First Lady, let's do this, okay? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There we go, in the corner. There and there. Thank you all very much. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Good job, buddy.